Hey, what's up guys? Hopefully everybody's doing very well. This video is all about the Fender Champion 600, that's this little one over here. And today we're going to hack it up and we'll try to make it sound and feel just like a Fender Tweed style champ. Yes, we're going to do printed circuit board soldering, but luckily we only need a couple of basic soldering tools, some basic soldering skills, a couple of electronic components, and most of the work is going to involve cutting out parts anyway. This is a very cheap hack to make this already cool little amp more versatile and also make it properly rock. So if those kind of things sound interesting to you, stick around. Okay, disclaimer time. Yes, I suppose this mod is reversible, but soldering on a printed circuit board can be a little bit tricky. We're going to remove a lot of tiny components and not all of these components may survive that. So in case you want to put things back to stock later on, try to replace the removed components with larger, normal sized components and use better quality ones. Okay, working on electrical gears such as guitar amplifiers and even these little ones may involve high voltages and therefore a shock hazard and instant death. So if you're going to be the one who's going to do this work, make sure you are qualified and experienced in doing so. If you're not sure, do not do any science experiments at home and just take it to someone qualified who can do this work for you. Another personal note, these amps out of the box in a stock configuration are actually very cool amps and they sound perfectly fine, there's nothing wrong with them. If you have one and you quite like the sound of it, please consider not hacking up your amp, but try to score a second example, maybe a broken one or already modified one, so you can do the modification on a second amp, because the difference between both is quite night and day, and that way you will still have some flexibility going on. Okay, with all of that out of the way, it's now time to start working on our modification. I shall try to record a voice over it here and there as we go through the steps of the process, and hopefully this will help you follow along. Let's go! Okay, here are the electrical components we need. We need a 22K 2-watt resistor, this will be a metal oxide version. We need a 22K 1-watt resistor, this can be a carbon film or either carbon comp. And we need a 1.5K 1-watt resistor or carbon comp resistor. We need a high quality tone capacitor. It's going to be a 0.022 microfarad. And we need some jumper wire, and we don't need this much. Now, screwing the amp is a very straight, simple process. The back of the cabinet is held by 4 screws, and the amp itself is held by 2 screws on the side. So after you disassembled everything, you can place your chassis nicely on your cabinet. Okay, for safety measures we're going to make sure there's no remaining voltage inside the amp, so we're going to drain the filter capacitors. This is being done with a drain cable. One end of the drain cable goes to the chassis, and one end of the drain cable with a big resistor on it goes to pin 1 of the first preamp tube. This is going to drain everything slowly. It's now time to start working on the amp, and first we're going to remove the tone stack in this amp, and we will start with removing resistors 18, 19, 20, 21 and 22, and you can see where they're located here. Now, in case you wonder what's a tone stack, the tone stack is basically an EQ section for this amp. Well, this amp replicates the 1948 Fender 600 amp visually. Circuitry wise is exactly more or less like a black phase or silver phase champ, and these came with treble and bass controls, except for the treble and bass controls and perhaps mid controls are actually set at fixed levels in this amp. So what happens when we're going to remove and bypass the tone stack is basically we retain more of our tone because it's not going to get filtered anymore. It's going to bump up the amp and gain a lot, it's going to make it sound darker perhaps, but also warmer and more responsive. Now, as mentioned before, we're going to remove these tiny components, and you could actually go the easy way and just cut them out. For the purpose of this video, I just try to desolder them and pull them out with a pair of pliers. And here's our little first before and after removing these 5 resistors. So here's before and here's after. It's now time to remove the capacitors of the TONESTACK. You can see that little blue one over there and the two orange ones, and these actually correspond with your treble, mid and bass controls. And the little blue one is actually easy to remove without any damage, and these orange ones they actually hit the board, so when trying to desolder them you might damage them anyway, so you might want to spare yourself the trouble and just cut them out. And all of that is said, of course, after you see me here struggling and trying to remove these capacitors and damaging them anyways. Here's another before and after. Here's before with the capacitors of the TONESTACK still in place, and here's after with the capacitors removed. Okay, the next part is going to be fun. We're going to take our tone capacitor and connect the bottom of C1 to the bottom of R21 with it. Now there's going to be solder left in these connections, so for neatness I'm going to first remove the solder with the desoldering tool, so we can connect our capacitor with fresh solder. And see, with the solder removed it's way easier to connect new components. So here we fold our capacitor in and just connect it up. And here you see it in place. You could actually use shrink wrap to shield off the lugs of the capacitor, but yeah, if it's connected properly, it should be fine. Oh boy, how we love these before and afters. Here's the before I work on the TONESTACK, and here's after. The next part of the operation is a little bit tricky and it's the least amount of fun in my opinion. We're going to keep removing resistors and we're going to replace them with jumper wire. So we're going to use our jumper wire and make little jumpers the size of the removed components. And what this does is basically simplifies the circuitry and bring it closer to a 5F1 layout. Okay, here you see resistor 3 removed and replaced with the jumper. It's actually a pretty straightforward job, and resistor 3 is easy to reach, but some other resistors are not so easy to reach, so you might risk burning your fingers and surrounding components. Please don't burn your fingers and surrounding components, just take your time and work carefully through this process. Now R7 is our negative feedback resistor. We're going to simply put in the value of a 5F1 Tweed Champ, that's 22k. We're going to use a 1 watt carbon film resistor. You could also use a carbon comp, either way is fine. Okay, it's now time to work on our cathode bypass caps. That's C3 and C10. Those are the small black caps you see over there on the left. The 5F1 actually has the C3, the 5E1 doesn't. So if you think your amp has too much gain or distortion after all the work is done, you could actually remove both of the caps. So now we're going to remove C10 only and leave C3 in place. Okay, we are actually almost there. We're going to work on a power section now, and we're going to alter it to 5F1 specs. We're going to look at R12. There's a 10k 2-watt resistor in there. We're going to remove this carefully because we're going to use this for R11. And we're going to use our metal oxide at 2-watt 22k resistor, and we're going to put this in R12. So here is our R11. As you can see, the resistor which was in there is already removed. So we're going to replace this R11 with the resistor we just removed from R12, that 10k 2-watt resistor. I'm trying to work carefully not to burn any surrounding wires. So yeah, raging coffee habit can be a little bit of an issue here. And the last step in our soldering party is R23. We're going to replace this with a 1.5k resistor. That's going to be our carbon film one. This is our cathode bypass resistor alongside C3. And here's a quick overview of the modified circuitry. After you checked and double checked and perhaps triple checked, it might be interesting to see how the amp is biased. This is a cathode biased amp, and calculating the bias is actually pretty easy. You measure the voltage drop across resistor number 10, that is our cathode bias resistor. I came to minus 17 volts here. And you divide that number by the actual resistance of that resistor. This is 470 ohms, and I came to 0.036 milliamps. And then you measure the plate voltage, and this amp was 361 volts. And then you subtract the voltage drop from that plate voltage, and that gives you a number. And the number to work with was 344 volts. And then you multiply that number by the number in milliamps. And that gave me 12 watts of plate dissipation. Now note that 12 watts of plate dissipation for a 6v6 is actually 100%, but since this is a class A single-ended amplifier, that's actually perfectly fine. So it's actually an optional thing. You could alter the value of resistor number 10. If you put a higher value in it, your plate dissipation will come down. If you put a low value in it, the plate dissipation will go up. Thank you very much for watching, and please feel free to leave a comment here below. Hopefully this video was of any use to you. Maybe we can all share our Champion 600 stories in the comments and have some proper amp slotting talk going on there. Up until then, please take care, behave, and we'll see each other soon.